This is the Mr. Irrelevant podcast. I chose a Mr. Irrelevant name not because I was even good enough to be drafted last overall in the NFL draft, but just because I was a simple average Joe just talking about my love for sports and my learning as much about sports as I possibly can. From football to F1 to really any sport he feels like talking about, Mr. Irrelevant podcast starts now. And welcome back to that show. I am feeling a little bit under the weather. Throat's kind of giving me some issues, so we're just going to try to dredge through this episode. If I sound a little bit off, it's because of that. If I'm not as loud as I usually am, probably also because of that. Also turned down the mic setting just a little bit, so I'm not peaking as much as I was last week. But we made it through the first week of NFL football. But before we get to week one reaction and going over my predictions and all that fun stuff and some more news having to do with the NFL, first of all, we are going to go through an insane week of college football. Now, it all started off, of course, with Texas barely losing to Bama. Now, I am a Texas Tech student as well as a Texas Tech fan, but boy, that was a fun game to watch. Part of me kind of wanted UT to win because if UT wins, Texas Tech plays them later in the season. Texas Tech beats them. It's pretty good on us, but I think this was probably the best of both worlds as far as that's concerned. So, of course, big storylines. Quinn Ewers does get hurts his shoulder. I think it's actually a collarbone more specifically, or it's a SC sprain is what it's being described as. Not a doctor, so I'm not even going to claim to know what's going on there. But from the reports I'm seeing on ESPN at least, he's supposed to be out for about 4 to 6 weeks. Now, as far as I know, Hudson Card's going to be taking over that spot. Hudson Card looked a lot better than he did last year. Another year in the system, another year playing collegiate football. And I'm a little biased towards the guy because he was in my graduating class. We did go to the same high school. Never talked to him really, just was a fun guy to watch play football. Him and Garrett Wilson together. If you know Garrett Wilson, wide receiver for the Jets, also I didn't play with him. We went to high school together. He was a year older than me. But watching those two play football in high school was absolutely incredible. So, Hudson Card gets another chance at it. Moving on, or continuing with the game, I should say, Bama just is lacking speed. That's what it looks like Bama's doing. Of course, they still have Nick Saban, so coaching's not any kind of a question. Bryce Young's still that guy, first sophomore to win the Heisman after Tebow did it. So he's just absolutely incredible quarterback. But they're just lacking speed. That's what I think that's what all the commentators were saying. I think it's true. They don't have a speed guy at receiver, and their backs are kind of small. Bama typically likes to have big bruising backs and very fast receivers, and it doesn't seem like they have that. Their defense also kind of looked a little bit lacking. Of course, it wasn't, that bad of a game, but it wasn't that high scoring of a game, I should say. But yeah, and who knows? This Texas team could just be those guys. Either Bama played down or Texas played up or a combination of both. Of course, we won't know until we continue to watch the season unfold. Moving right along, talking a little bit about my Texas Tech Red Raiders. Of course, we win a close one in double overtime over Houston, 33-30. Backup quarterback looked good. Team looked good. Just a close game. Really couldn't score consistently, I guess I should say. A lot of back and forth, but I think the team's growing. Our starters should be back either for the Texas game, if not the following game, because we have a bye after that Texas game. But yeah, we should see how that goes. Just wanted to throw that a little bit in there for any fellow Texas Tech fans that might listen to the podcast. Moving right along, the biggest storyline in college football this week was the absolute dominance of the Sun Belt Conference. Now, my parents, both my mom and my dad, graduated from the University of Louisiana, Ragin' Cajuns, who are in the Sun Belt Conference. And watching Georgia Southern, Marshall, and Appalachian State win on Saturday brought me immense joy. If playing those teams, I want them to lose. UL playing those teams, I definitely want them to lose. Definitely want UL to win. But Georgia Southern winning over Nebraska, forcing Nebraska then to fire Scott Frost and give him a $17.7 million buyout for his contract, and then he scoots his little butt down the handrail on that staircase on campus. when they could have waited 3 weeks and the buyout would have only been like $3 million, I think it was. Absolutely insane. That score was 45-42 if you didn't watch. Georgia Southern beats Nebraska. I mean, we all kind of figured after the game in Ireland that that they weren't gonna, the Northwestern game, that they weren't gonna be, they weren't gonna be 100% back. We all kind of knew that. But then to go out and lose to Georgia Southern, a good team, but not the best, not one of the top tier, top echelon teams in the Sun Belt Conference, is absolutely hysterical to me. Of course, maybe a little bit even more embarrassing was Marshall winning over Texas A&M. Over Notre Dame. That score was 26-21. Didn't really get to watch that game too much, but all I know is that Notre Dame is definitely not back and throws kind of into question Ohio State a little bit. I think Ohio State played a pay game this week, but kind of throws their program into question, at least for the season, because if Notre Dame loses to Marshall and they played Ohio State that closely, is Ohio State good? We'll have to wait and see on that one, of course. But the most embarrassing game of the week in college football, quite possibly the biggest storyline of them all, App State goes into Kyle Field and gets it done against number 6 ranked Texas A&M, 17-14. Insanity. Absolute insanity. App State's been in a nuisance in the Sun Belt Conference ever since they entered and came out of the FCS system into the FBS system. They've been, UL's pain in the ass. And to see them go beat Texas A&M, even with that pain in the ass, brings absolute joy to me. Also, they have a gorgeous campus. I've actually toured their campus. Went up there with my girlfriend one year. And it's absolutely gorgeous up there. And I do believe College Game Day is actually going to be there this upcoming Saturday. So that'll kind of be cool to see. But their campus went bonkers. Just seeing the videos on social media. Absolutely insanity. Not much more to say about that. I was watching the Tech games. Really, the only two games college football games I watched this week was Texas Bama and Texas Tech Houston. Of course, I would always check into the other games when I saw that the Sun Belt was doing so good. But absolute insane week for college football. If this is what college football is going to be like, bring on that 12 team. That 12 team playoff, because any given week, right? Like, we knew this, but this is insanity. There are teams left, right, and center. Now in my show notes, I did say that I was going to be taking a break here, but I think we're going to push on ahead. Go ahead and react to the Bills-Rams game. Of course, it was the opening game of the season. It feels so long ago because I do these episodes twice a week, and the last episode was the episode leading into this game, but it feels so long since I wrote this down. But we're going to go ahead, do Bills-Rams probably, and then take a break, and then do this Sunday and Monday slate after the break. I'm just trying to get as much done as my throat can handle right now, and right now we're feeling good. So moving right along, Thursday night, first game of the regular season for NFL, the NFL season of 2022. Bills at the Rams. That game, oh my goodness. Oh my God. You had The Rock come out, first of all. Well, back up. Banner ceremony. OBJ's in the building, randomly. Okay? Holding the Lombardi, celebrating with Whitworth. And then The Rock cuts a promo before the game. And then you have the game. And I'm going to be honest. Stafford, while he did not look like himself, he did not look, as good as he once did or once was. He was good once as he ever was. But Stafford, he took too many hits. He got hit like 15 times, took 7 sacks. And the thing is, the Bills did not call a blitz the entire game. The entire game was 4-man rush. They have the most insane depth at defensive linemen that I have ever seen. They had like 10 active defensive linemen. I think it was actually 6 or 7 rotating through. Of course, one of which is Von Miller, who got 2 sacks. How you doing? Keep it moving. Of course, he has that, I wouldn't say, he has an interesting haircut. He's got a Dorito in the back of his head, if you know what I'm talking about. And then moving on, they had 2 rookie corners in. 2 rookie corners. Them being the Bills. A first rounder and a 6th rounder. Trey White was out. Their top corner. they still dominated. I mean, to be 100% honest, Josh Allen did look a little slow at the beginning. Granted, he did went like 10 for 10 in his first 10 throws. But what I say is he threw 2 picks early, even though one wasn't necessarily his fault. I was playing against him in fantasy. My opponent had him, and then I had Stephon Diggs. So it was kind of like an interesting, like, keep throwing picks, but then also throw the ball to Stephon. Ended up working out, ended up getting the dub this week. How's it going? But he did start a little bit slow, but then after those 2 picks, I mean, Josh Allen just became Josh Allen, just absolutely ran away with the game, literally running over people, stiff-arming Derrick Henry style. It was insanity to watch. I want to watch that every single week. It was insane. Concerning for the Bills, or concerning for the Rams, their defense could not stop. I mean, given high-powered offense in the Bills' offense, I do understand that, but they could not make a stop. Jalen Ramsey, who's supposed to be one of the best corners in the league, gave up 4 receptions for 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. Not that many receptions, but then the yards after catch plus the touchdowns make it absolutely insane. I mean, Cooper Kupp's still that guy. They didn't target Allen Robinson like at all. I think he maybe got targeted twice, maybe 3 times. I mean, it just insanity. I don't know what's going to go on with the Rams. We're going to have to wait and see on that front. I think they'll be fine. I think they just have a couple things need to work out. I think they'll bounce back from this. But the Bills beat the Bills, and the Bills this year are Super Bowl champions. Calling it now. I think that was my prediction. No, that was definitely my prediction. But as far as my prediction for this week is concerned, that is the first one that's correct. And now the way we're going to do this is we're going to go down all the games from the Sunday slate and the Monday slate, and obviously we just went to the Thursday one, and I'm tallying up the totals. I have it marked down here at the bottom of my show notes, and we're going to go over, and every single week I'm going to keep track of that, and at the end of the season we're going to see how well I did as far as predictions are concerned. With that being said, we're going to take a little break before we go through the Sunday slate and the Monday slate. First part of this episode was probably going to be shorter than the second half, but I just want to give my throat a break before I get rolling with the rest of these Sunday's games. So hope you guys are enjoying, and I'll see you after the break. It'll be a couple seconds for you, probably a little bit longer for me. We'll see you after this break. And welcome back to that show. That show being, of course, the Mr. Irrelevant podcast. Going over, of course, as we were previously, the Week 1 slate for the NFL games. Now moving on to my New Orleans Saints versus the Atlanta Falcons. Now, that game. Got a couple things I want to talk about. Saints defense got a slow start. I was legitimately concerned there in the first half that Dennis Allen had forgotten about the defense whenever he made the move to head coach. Luckily, that ended up not being the case. Defense did play big in the second half, especially in the fourth quarter. I mean, the whole team came together in the fourth quarter. That was amazing to see. Their slow start was a little bit concerning. Corners, the defensive backs just don't seem to be able to be on the same page. Might be just growing pains. Some of them didn't really play in preseason. Some of them had some, especially Tyrann Mathieu, missed some at training camp. So we'll see if it just with time they end up getting a hang of it. But that was definitely a bit concerning. They also lacked a run game. Alvin Kamara was kind of quiet. Mark Ingram, I think, broke off 1 or 2 big runs, but the run game overall was a bit lacking. Chalked it up maybe to the O-line taking a step backward as far as talent's concerned. But guys, the biggest thing, Michael Thomas, MT, can't guard Mike, is back. Dropped a couple balls early in the game. Just maybe just one of those things where you just had to get hit, had to catch a ball, whatever. But in the fourth quarter, he returned. Ended up getting 2 pivotal touchdowns, made some insane catches. He's all the way back. Him and Jameis Winston seem to be on the same page. If the Saints play like they did in the fourth quarter for the rest of the season, I do think they're going to be hard to beat. Now, given it was against the Atlanta Falcons, Marcus Mariota looked okay. He was pretty accurate, ran the ball a bunch. Cordell Patterson still seems to be insane. Glad that I picked him as a possible sleeper in my fantasy league. Going to give him a tryout this week, I do believe. But yeah, I mean, Kyle Pitts still, one of the, versatile weapon, one of the most talented tight ends of all time, is going to be having an insane career. But yeah, it was just it was a game. It was too close for comfort as a New Orleans fan, but I also chalked up a correct prediction on that one. Moving now to San Francisco 49ers taking on the Chicago Bears at Soldier Field. This was a monsoon game. The downpour was insane. The puddles on the field. Soldier Field just got new grass like before this game, and it was flooding terribly. They could not squeegee the water off fast enough. Justin Fields actually looked incredible. Even though it was a rain game, he was, stepping up in the pocket. He was running around, delivering dimes if and when it was necessary. Justin Fields, I think, took a step. Maybe not a giant leap, but he definitely took a step, and he looked fantastic. The 49ers, though, are definitely going to struggle from injuries. Just before starting this recording, it was announced that Elijah Mitchell is going to be placed on IR, meaning that he's going to miss at least 4 games, or the next 4 games. George Kittle also didn't play. So, the 49ers were missing some of their big cornerstones as far as offensive talent's concerned. And maybe it was a good idea that they kept Jimmy G. I mean, we were questioning the idea of keeping him whenever you said that it was obviously Trey Lance's team, but obviously they saw something they didn't necessarily like from Trey Lance. That's why they ended up keeping Jimmy G, just restructuring his contract. But Trey Lance did look like he struggled, but of course lacked weapons, and your first, true NFL start comes during an absolute monsoon. Probably didn't help. And I'll be honest, I got that one wrong. I disrespected the Bears. Probably last time I'll end up doing that one, but I do owe Bears fans and Bears Nation an apology for that one. Moving on to Pittsburgh versus Cincinnati. This was a game that was a football game that I watched a little bit of. Burrow threw 4 picks, and he's my starting quarterback for my fantasy team, so not ideal. Definitely not ideal. Cincinnati, even though they went out and they bought an O-line and they bolstered it, they are still having O-line issues. Joe Burrow got hit way too many times. He got sacked like 9 times. I mean, he's been sacked 24 times in the last 4 games. That's not okay for your starting NFL quarterback. Since he's long snapper also got injured, which ended up losing the game, which was an insane thing to say. But Jamar Chase and Joey Burrow still look to have a good connection. I think that Joe is going to be okay. I just think that Pittsburgh got to him. That is simple as that. Now the Pittsburgh defense looks to be amazing as always. I feel like my fantasy league kind of disrespected them because they're still in free agency, contemplating picking them up. But then I think I'm gonna second guess that and say no, mainly because T.J. Watt now has a partially torn pec, I believe it is. It sounds like they're going to go for the rehab option, so he's only going to be out for 6 weeks, but we shall see if he's able to return in full capacity at the end of that, or if it's like limited snaps, he's on a snap count or something like that. We'll have to wait and see on that front. Mitchell Trubisky actually looked decent. He was making some throws, he was moving around a little bit, and as long as they're winning, I think that they keep him in. Really hope they don't pull him, even if he's winning, just to get Kenny Pickett in there. I think the longer Kenny Pickett sits and watches, I think it might be the better, but we shall wait and see. But Pittsburgh is still having running issues. They still don't seem like they can get the run game going, even with the amazing back that is Najee Harris. I simply think it's because of, I think his name, Matt Canada is the offensive coordinator. I think just his style of offense, his style of play calling is not warranting good running. So that might be something that comes back to bite them in the butt, as it has done in the past. Moving now on to Philadelphia versus, forgot to mention, I also got that wrong. So we are struggling. Now moving on to Philadelphia and Detroit. Detroit looks good. So does Philadelphia, though. And Philadelphia just looked better. It was a close, hard-fought game, especially there at the end. A.J. Brown, or the connection between Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown is definitely going to be an issue. Nick Sirianni letting Hurts be himself and, play the style of football that he's good at, running around, maybe, not staying in the pocket if he doesn't feel like it's best for his talent set, really allowing Jalen Hurts to be his own type of football player, which I think needed to happen. Also, my sleeper, one of my most important and favorite sleeper picks for fantasy this year was Amon-Ra St. Brown. Ended up coming back and being, or not coming back, but ended up coming true. Amon-Ra St. Brown looks to be an amazing wide receiver and will be a very good target for Jared Goff moving forward. Detroit just couldn't run the ball. Detroit could run the ball. Sorry, they couldn't throw the ball as well as they had wanted to. I think Philadelphia just looked good all around. It was a close fought game, but I do like Philly down the stretch. I just think they need some more time to kind of get the chemistry going, especially on the defensive backside. Adding 2 more corner pieces to that, and I did get that prediction correct. I did go ahead and predict that Philadelphia would beat Detroit, which ended up being what happened. Moving now on to New England versus Miami. The Patriots might be dead. Have we checked on them, guys? Because theirs look like they're struggling. Mac Jones got hurt. This game was blacked out for me, so I didn't get to watch it. But I saw that he was hurt. But it looks to just be back spasms, so he should be back next week. Be fine. Miami looks incredible. Tua to Tyreek and then Tua to Waddle will be an issue. I mean, that much speed on an offense is dangerous. And the Miami defense was just held it down. That they might not have a lot of big maulers up front. They have their young D end out of Miami that almost retired. I think the last name Phillips or something like that. He was the other guy besides Gregory Rousseau. He looks, of course, I'm saying this because that's like their guy, but their defensive backs, their linebackers, they have a fantastic group of both, and they look incredible. Moving right along now to, moving it on now to the, I also got that prediction correct, the Baltimore and New York Jets. Now, slow start for Baltimore. It kind of looked as though Lamar Jackson just kind of didn't want to be there, but then he just came into his own. The long shot down to Rashad Bateman was incredible. Lamar Jackson is back. He's betting on himself. This is Lamar Jackson playing Lamar Jackson football, looking for that big payday. And it's fun. It's much-watch TV. Now, of course, the Jets they just look bad, is the best way to put it. Now, they are missing Zach Wilson. It was footsteps Flacco back there in the back or behind center or under center, but that's no excuse for the fact that how bad that they looked. Garrett Wilson did have a couple good catches, so, happy with that. I got that prediction correct. Jacksonville versus Washington. Carson Wentz finally beats the Clown Town team. Carson Wentz takes revenge on that abysmal game that he had with the Colts last season. Ended up losing or knocking them out of playoff contention. What are you going to do about it? Had a lot of great throws, a lot of great play extensions, a lot of lucky throws, a lot of dropped interceptions, so on and so forth. Jacksonville did look okay. It looks like they're taking a step in the right direction. Just needs some more time to kind of mend some things, so on and so forth. I was kind of honestly surprised at how good Washington looked. That being said, of course, I got this prediction wrong. But Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson both looked incredible. So I do think that Washington should surprise some people this upcoming season. Cleveland versus Carolina. Baker did have a slow start, but of course this is him with a new offense, and I kind of figured that he would. But later in the game, Baker started looking like Baker, doing Baker things, which is exactly why Carolina went out and picked him up. Cleveland's run game is going to be a problem. So Kevin Stefanski is having Nick Chubb and or Hunt switching between running back and fullback, kind of disguising each other and also being able to get them on the field at the same time. I actually have a quote from the fullback expert himself, David Miller. If you don't know who David Miller is, he is, of course, the host of the Ball Knowers podcast over on wherever you get your podcast. I was a guest on it once for the Saints preseason recap or whatever. But I tweeted him this morning asking about the situation, and his exact quote is criminal activity, especially with Hunt. And I think what he means is that you're limiting. I don't mean to put words in his mouth whatsoever, but I think you're limiting, the player's talent when you do this. I think it's a very creative way, and this might be the future, but of course, you are taking jobs for fullbacks, and that's never a good thing. Myles Garrett still looks to be incredible, and Carolina will be better with Baker, and I think Cleveland will be able to hold it down until Deshaun Watson comes back. I think both these teams are going to surprise some people. Maybe not the Browns, but be more surprising with Jacoby Brissett than I think people expected. I did get that prediction wrong. I really wanted the revenge game for Baker. It just didn't end up working out. Came down to late field goals, so on and so forth. Now, Indianapolis versus Houston. This is an interesting one because was I correct? Was I wrong? Or do I give myself a tie? And what I mean by that, if you didn't watch the game, first off, let's just go through my notes. Matt Ryan definitely needs more weapons. Michael Pittman Jr., Mo Alley Cox, JT. By JT, I mean Jonathan Taylor. Good weapons. Need more depth, though, at that wide receiver especially. Jonathan Taylor still looks to be incredible, though. Davis Mills might be that guy for the Texans. I think the Texans have something there. A late-round draft pick quarterback, but he looks to have taken a step. Unusual miss for Blankenship to lose the game, or one of the reasons why they lost the game. And actually, before recording this, news broke that they're waiving him, so they're fucking done with him. They said, get out of here. Took him out behind the barn, put him down, and now they're looking for a new kicker. They worked out some kickers today. I don't believe I have any news as far as who they're bringing in, but we shall wait and see. And what another thing was interesting is I heard that Indianapolis punted with a couple seconds left in overtime, which is a very, very weird situation. Maybe Frank Reich forgot that this is the new overtime rules and there's not going to be a second overtime. Who knows? But they ended up tying. So for this, I gave myself a tie. So it's going to be number one as far as the record for this week's concerned. Moving now on to the Giants versus Tennessee. Saquon Barkley is 100% back. New York Giants, more specifically Daboll, trusted his players and trusted Saquon Barkley. Went for 2, got the win against Tennessee. Daniel Jones did look a little bit better than he did last year, but there's still some great question marks. Tennessee is definitely missing A.J. Brown. They just were not moving the ball properly whatsoever. And where was King Henry? Like I only watched a few minutes, of the fourth quarter. But of those few minutes in the fourth quarter, he had like 0 meaningful snaps. 3 running backs actually, including him, took meaningful snaps for Tennessee during that game. I got that one wrong. I thought Tennessee would go in and whoop their asses. They did not. The Giants could be a little bit competitive this year. We'll have to wait and see, of course, but they look decent. Green Bay versus Minnesota. I mean, this is just what we come to expect from Green Bay in week 1. I think next season and moving forward, as long as Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback there and as long as he refuses to show up to shit and do shit for the team, you can go ahead and hit. You can go ahead and fade Green Bay Packers money line on week 1 and feel pretty confident in yourself. But then again, Minnesota might be a top 3 NFC team. Justin Jefferson continues to just be an amazing wide receiver, one of the best. Adam Thielen also, despite his age, an absolute amazing wide receiver. Kirk Cousins looked renewed, looked fresh. Minnesota defense, despite their age, still looks incredible. Dalvin Cook, making people miss, barreling up the middle. Green Bay definitely needs receivers, though. Alan Lazard was out due to some weird injury caused by in practice of someone falling, whatever. But they do need help at the wide receiver. Aaron Rodgers, might look into playing in preseason and going to OTAs. But yeah, that was correct prediction on my part. What you gonna do about it? Kansas City versus Arizona. Mahomes is so good at the football. 4 touchdowns in the game. Travis Kelce still amazing. Juju looked really good back in that number 2 wide receiver role. Clyde Edwards-Helaire looked like himself from LSU wearing the new Guardian cap helmet. Not actually a Guardian cap helmet, but people are calling it that because it kind of looks like it. Arizona needs their weapons back, and they might struggle until they get them back. J.J. Watt, of course, injured. DeAndre Hopkins missing. I believe one of their other receivers was hurt as well. So Arizona definitely struggling. Kyler Murray definitely going to be struggling without his weapons. They might struggle out the gate here early. We'll have to wait and see, but I got that prediction 100% correct. Las Vegas versus the Chargers. Another game that was blacked out for me, but from the clips I saw, Justin Herbert is all that, is everything that we thought he was, and that's pretty much it. Derek Carr to Devontae does look like it's going to be really good early. They had a really good connection already, and that's going to be dangerous if they can figure out the rest of their team. The Los Angeles Chargers defense, I heard, started slow, but then got up to speed. Might just need to make a couple tweaks here and there, and they should be all right. Las Vegas, of course, might need to figure out their run game a little bit more, and their other receivers, but we'll have to wait and see on that front. I did, unfortunately, get that prediction 100% wrong. Moving right along to the Sunday night game, which was Tampa Bay versus Dallas. Now, big news here, coming out this morning, actually, is that not the first part, but the second part of the news. Dak Prescott shattered his thumb during the game, pretty, towards the middle. He went into surgery almost immediately, very successful surgery. Jerry Jones then comes out today and announces that they're not putting Dak on IR, which is a very interesting move. They expect him to be able to return in those 4 weeks, but why would you rush him? In my opinion, put him on IR, go out and get a veteran that's kind of bopping around a practice squad or something somewhere, and have him play until Dak's. I mean, you just paid this guy. That's your franchise guy. Why would you not wait? Let him recover and just see what happens. Beyond me, but we'll have to wait and see on that. And Dallas is going to need some more weapons. Their O-line did look to struggle, but Micah Parsons on the defense got 2 sacks and looked incredible, looked unstoppable. I feel real good about my early pick for him winning defensive MVP. I think that is definitely something that's on the table. I mean, TB12 is magic. TB12 is black magic, actually. TB12 is all the way back. Tom Brady looked absolutely incredible. Julio Jones was doing old Julio Jones stuff. Julio Jones looked like prime Julio Jones. He was making people miss. He was going up and getting balls. He was going down the field, deep balls. He was faster than everybody. He was cutting harder than everybody. He looked incredible. Now, Chris Godwin did get hurt. He's got a hamstring. He's going to miss a couple weeks, so that's something to think about. Moving on here, Tampa Bay's O-line looked like it'd hold up, minus the Micah Parsons, but that's Micah Parsons, I think, more so than is the O-line. But Tampa Bay's run game looked good too. I feel, these early predictions for the season that I made in episode 1, they looking real good right now, in my opinion. Looking real good. I did actually get that prediction correct as well. Now, Monday night's game was insanity. They booed Russ. Denver versus Seattle at Seattle. The 12th man, as Russ is coming out on the field for warm-ups, boo him. Boo him the whole game. It was insanity. There was a lot of fumbles on the part of Denver, a lot of, especially on the goal line. They gave up 2 on the 1-inch line. Geno Smith in the first half looked incredible. He was running, making people move, extending plays, hitting the deep ball, finesse on his throws. They looked incredible. Seattle might actually be better than I anticipated, better than most people anticipated. Shout out to my buddy Declan. I think I shouted him out in one of my previous episodes, but I said that they might suck. They look good. Now, this is very much an overreaction, but this is only week 1, but take it for what you want. Denver, they got a new head coach. That new head coach needs to get better at play calling. He is the play caller. He's an offensive guru, or allegedly. He needs to do better play calling, better clock management. They get the ball with 4 minutes on the clock, and they could not get closer than a 64-yard field goal. And that's how they lose the game. 4th and 5. They're 64 yards away from a field goal. They have 50 seconds. They let the clock run down 30, and then they call a timeout and bring on the kicker. You paid Russell Wilson $268-something million, and you don't trust him to go out there and get a 4th and 5. Instead, you go for the 64-yard field goal, ended up losing the game instead of letting Russ cook, which is what you paid him to do. Absolute insanity to me. Some of Russell Wilson's balls didn't look as zippy as they used to. Could have just been weather. Could have just been a number of things. Also, he needs to work on his connection to some of his receivers a little bit more. But the tight ends from both teams looked absolutely insane. And Jamal Adams, unfortunately, did go down with injury. Bad hamstring injury is going to be a multi-week thing. Seeing 6 to 8 weeks, maybe 4 positively, but that is the case. Overall, I ended up going 8-7-1, of course, with that tie with Indy and Houston. Let me know what you guys thought of this week's week 1 of the NFL season. As always, I've been your host, Connor Bork. Go ahead and drop a follow on all of the podcast and myself's social medias linked down below wherever you're listening or watching this. And I will see you all on Thursday with a preview for week 2 and any other news that'll hit the airwaves between now and then. Hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your week, and I will see you all Thursday. Peace.